So tensions have again flared at the Gold One Motor East mine, that's in Springs here in Gauteng on the East Rand. Contractors and managers are reportedly being kept underground against their will after miners were dismissed for taking part in a sit-in at that mine last month. Let's speak now to Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe about the situation at Motor East mine. A very good evening to you, Minister. Good to have your time. So the assessment, am I right, has now changed from a sit-in at this mine to that of a hostage situation. How have officials arrived at that conclusion?
Good evening. I was in Gold One yesterday. We're dealing with a situation of trying to resolve a sit-in where we would deal with the demands of workers and understand why are they having a sit-in. But today, the situation changed dramatically. It became a hostage drama in the sense that 3 people came out of underground heavily beaten. And once you begin to beat people up, it means they are held hostage. They are underground against their own will. And therefore, it should be dealt with as an offense that requires police intervention.
You say 2 people emerged from underground today, beaten. Have they told you, or anyone at the mine management at least, who beat them and why they were assaulted?
Actually, was sitting with one was given a notice, which was said to be a message from AMCO, which demands a number of issues and must be responded within 2 hours. Otherwise, a miner who is underground will be thrown down the drain and die. So once you begin to threaten to kill, it is not a sit-in, it is a hostage drama. And therefore, we are hoping that it will be resolved without any further injuries that will be incurred.
And that 2 hours that you say was mentioned in the note, am I right to say that that has probably passed now? And if it has, do we know if that apparent threat in the note, perhaps the workers underground have delivered on that?
What we have done, once it becomes a hostage drama, we handed it over to the police. It's a police case now. And they must deal with the hostage situation. And that's why they send their own specialized units to deal with hostage situations.
And do you know what that will entail at this point? Will it entail, for example, at a very basic level, negotiations, a hostage negotiator being brought in to try and secure the release of people who may be underground against their will?
You know, in the first sit-in, because this is the second sit-in, there were a number of demands. One of those was to do away with a closed shop agreement which the NUM had. NUM has voluntarily agreed to say, let's give away that and be able to have freedom of association, and that is behind our backs. But now there are quite a number of new demands that emerged. People were actually taken to disciplinary hearings in the first sit-in. They want those to be cleaned. And our view is that once you begin to have no system and you can't have appeals and have people represented, you will have no system and you will have no mind.
So what is the best way then to deal with that? Because if at the heart of this latest tension is unhappiness among some of the mine workers because their colleagues who participated in the sit-in last month have been dismissed, as some reports are suggesting, do you think that bringing those workers, for example, back into the employ of the mine would resolve the situation?
Workers who are outside the mine said they want to be represented by their leaders, AMCO. AMCO is not coming to the fore. Therefore, we can't just talk to anybody. We expect AMCO to come and represent the interests of those who want to be presented by them. Because the NUM is available, management is available. AMCO is nowhere to be found.
What do you mean by AMCO is nowhere to be found, Minister?
I talked to the president of the AMCO yesterday and said to him, your availability here will be helpful in terms of trying to resolve this issue. He promised to send a team, and in the mind there was an expectation of an AMCO delegation arriving at 9 o'clock this morning. That delegation didn't come up, and therefore it is nowhere to be found. We still expect AMCO to come forward. Those who think they can be represented better by AMCO, be allowed to be represented by AMCO. and therefore have an engagement on the issues on the table.
And just for you and our viewers, we are expecting to speak to AMCU on Newzroom Afrika around 8:30 tonight. So there'll be that conversation to speak to the union to get a sense of where they are. But just on what you're saying about how they're nowhere to be found at the moment, News 24 has published an article where they quote AMCU's Jeff Mpahlele, who says that they do not regard what's happening at Gold One as a hostage situation. They in fact say that workers decided not to come out after their colleagues were dismissed by Gold One, and they've never heard that people were being held against their will. Mpahlele apparently told News 24 that the hostage claim is an assumption. How do you respond?
Mpahlele has the same assumption that we had yesterday, that there is a sit-in and therefore must engage. But today, as people are coming out one by one, beaten up, and a message written in black and white that, listen, if you don't react quickly, we are going to kill a person here. That doesn't sound like a sit-in. It sounds like a hostage. That's why it requires police intervention. Therefore, if Mr. Mpahlele, the General Secretary of AMCU, is convinced, he must go to Gold One and be part of trying to find a solution.
And have you been able to reach them? Either you or mine management have been able to reach AMCU post that note where you say a threat was made to kill another worker or kill a worker if demands apparently made by AMCU members are not met within 2 hours?
They were reached out by many people, and the last message they gave us was that they are not coming. And therefore, if they are not coming and the workers here say, we want AMCU, it means they want to create a stalemate without engagement. And therefore, it is not acceptable that you have people underground held against their will. I'm asserting that, because if people come out beaten and the note that we received claimed to be on behalf of AMCU, which is going to kill Peter and Jan within 2 hours, that is actually hostage drama.
And how many people are actually underground at the moment? Because I know when this story first broke, there was confusion.
409 people are underground. And
how many of those do you believe are there against their will?
You know, Mr. Mkotot, my background is in the trade union movement. A hostage can be held by 2 people and you hold 500 people hostage. If there is a threat and the information that came through was that people who are holding others hostage are about 20. And that's quite a big number to hold people hostage. It is possible to hold 400 people hostage if you are 20. You can do that if you are 2. You can do that if you are 20.
Mm-hmm. So at this stage, is it true that among those being held are 70 senior workers and contractors?
Yes, it's contractors and miners and one shift boss, I believe.
And the other report that I had seen said these were miners wearing balaclavas, etc. From the 2 people who've come out who you say were assaulted, have they been able to tell you perhaps about whether or not those who are holding the others against their will are armed, etc.? I'm trying to gauge just the danger of the situation potentially.
No, you don't need to say they are armed. You can see the damage done to the bodies of those who come out, that something serious is happening there. People are beaten up, they can't move, they can't shake, they are in hospital now.
Mm-hmm. But there also appears to be a trend, Minister, more generally, doesn't there? Because in the last few months where we're seeing sit-ins as a form of industrial action in the mines. Also these claims that some of these situations are in fact hostage dramas, as you've characterized what's going on now at Gold One. Are you concerned at all that this may become a pattern that increases in frequency at the country's mines?
I make a very big difference between a sit-in and a hostage. I know that very well. A sit-in is when workers have a demand, they don't come out of underground, or they refuse to go down the shaft, and they have a demand. Then you can deal with that demand. That is a sit-in. It's an extreme way of protest. It is acceptable. It must be handled with care, and people must be listened to. But once people begin to be beaten up and intimidated, It is not a sit-in, it is a hostage drama. I know that distinction. I understand it. We see it coming through. What we should analyze further, which we have not done thus far, who is behind the sit-ins? If there is a particular formation that drives the sit-ins, we will begin to understand that it is a strategy of a particular organization to use sit-ins to intimidate and push their demands. And therefore, we're going to create a situation of the survival of the fittest and the destruction of the weak in the industry.
How then, if that is indeed what's going on, should government, business and labour respond? Can they even respond collectively at this stage, given that much of what we see here exposes a clear rift, especially between the companies and the unions, and even among the labour formations themselves?
No. When there is an issue and a demand, for example, the demand to do away with closed shop agreement, and the NUM, which is a trade union, said, we are not depending on a closed shop for our survival. We can give it away. I think its notice that was given in terms of the law ends on the 14th of December, and everybody is aware, AMCO is aware. But to have a second sit-in today and then culminate into a hostage drama, it means that you can just hold people underground and demand a recognition, which is a function of numbers. You don't just get recognition because you are powerful or you can threaten people. You will prove numbers of your members and they will be verified and will get a recognition.
And the claim initially at Gold One was that there had been collusive, if you will, if you can frame it that way, behavior between the mining company and the NUM. I know you've already pointed out that that union has said that it's open to giving up the sole representation status that it previously held. To what extent, though, are unions and the employers in the sector to blame for what we are seeing as an escalation, if you will, in the ways in which workers are expressing themselves and their dissatisfaction? Do you think they bear any responsibility?
Mr. Mkotot, can I give you an example? I am one of those people who believe that a closed shop agreement is one of the worst things you do in any workplace because you deprive the workers the right of choice. But it is widely used in the industry. For example, when we were in Impala last week for a disaster, there is a close shop between Impala and AMCO, and there are more than 1,000 NUM members who cannot be represented because there is a closed shop. It's a worst thing. It's a worst form of depriving workers' right to form and join their own union. Then we go to Gold One, we find that the NUM had a closed shop agreement. They've given it up. They are not saying they are willing. They've given it up. It will be not effective from the 14th of December. And to me, I'm saying we must look into this closed shop agreement in all the industry. I want to play for it. Where management formed a works council, you know, the old work council, which is formed by management, registered the work council as a union, and they say we have a closed shop agreement. Basically saying union must not organize and play for. It's the most abused form of provision of the law that should be revisited, and we've undertaken to visit it ourselves.
By revisit, do you mean do away with it altogether?
It must be done away with because it is abused.
And what is the benefit, I wonder, of some mining companies choosing to go that route? Is it because it's easier to get their way when there's more than one, when there's only one union on site?
Obviously, it's easy to bargain with one union. It's very complex to bargain with 2, 3, 4 unions. For any employer, they would prefer to have one union to negotiate with. It's the worst form of deprivation for workers to make choices.
Is it also easier for the alleged greasing of palms or collusion that some workers have alleged is happening at these operations? Does the presence of a sole union make it easier for management basically to hand brown envelopes to the labour reps to make sure that there are no problems?
Now, collusion is always made by a particular union against another. But I'm telling you, this thing of closed shop agreement is widespread in the industry. We must visit it and look into it because it is causing conflict. It is depriving workers' choices.
Minerals Minister Gwede Mantashe, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.